she just said that they found him in a river and he's got an arrow through his head.
This is the first time I'd come across a murder where crossbow had been used. It was rather bizarre.
There's no license required. It is pretty deadly. It's quiet.
If she was able to remove the arrow from the skull, it would have been the perfect crime.
Graham Chatburn, a 46-year-old railway employee from Cape Town, met 31-year-old Louisa Griffith, a young widow with 2 children, in July 1989, just days after her husband Fani du Toit committed suicide. Graham, who'd been married twice before, was lonely and depressed after his own divorce, had an eye for the ladies, and quickly became smitten with Louisa.
At that time, when I met Louisa, my dad and myself, we shared a flat. So the two of us were living together. So if I bring somebody home, he's got to sort of be checked by my father. And when he brings somebody home, it was like me checking her out type of thing.
Graham had gone with his pastor to comfort the newly widowed Louisa at her home.
It wasn't even a week, I think, when they actually started seeing one another, which I think was a shock to a lot of people because she was just widowed and suddenly my dad is going and visiting this woman that's now a widow. And I asked him, how did her husband die? He said he committed suicide and he's supporting her. So I think it started off in a supportive manner. But it changed to a very serious thing very, very quickly. So he brought her to the flat, and I can honestly say I wasn't crazy about her. She's young. I mean, she's, I think, barely 10, 12 years older than me, if that. When my mom and him divorced, he was sort of not in a good space for a long time. And it was nice to see him have this sparkle and light in the eyes and very in love, very in love.
I think Graham wanted to help also because remember now, her first husband, Fani du Toit, was now, it was a mere 2 days after his death that they started a relationship.
I just sort of tried to be nice to her because she made him happy, you know. And then I did move and he then didn't have a place to go and he moved in with her. And so, yeah, that's, I think, when it really became serious.
Just months after what seemed a whirlwind romance, Graham Chatburn and Louisa married in December 1989. But things soon started to go wrong.
There's a lot of things, I think, that put financial strain on them. And I think the reason why she married somebody was more, not really for love, but maybe a bit for security. Maybe the money of the ex-husband ran out, in my opinion. I think money was a big issue in the marriage right from the start. He lost his job and there was a whole thing that I think upset her quite a bit. It was a little bit of an ugly situation.
Louisa had not found the financial security she'd hoped for with her new husband.
She liked to have boutique clothes. She was somebody who liked to have her hair done. She liked to be young and good looking and well cared for, well looked after. So the financial strain, I think, came very quick after their wedding. And I think that to her was a big shock, that suddenly she thought she's getting a man that's going to look after her, and it wasn't the case.
Louisa started divorce proceedings in early 1991, and the divorce was finalized in May that year. Graham Chatburn was devastated and did everything he could to win Louisa back. People were surprised when they remarried in December the same year.
I had been contacted by a distant relative of Mr. Graham Chatburn, and this person informed me that he had gone missing. He got up the Sunday morning to go for a walk, and he just never come back home. And this person asked me to try and create some press interest, you know, get a photograph of him into the newspapers so that he could be found.
Graham Chatburn's brother Noel, who just had a terrible accident himself, led the search.
Uncle Noel just accidentally cut off his hand, and they sort of managed to put everything together, and he was searching for my father day in, day out with his hand like this in the air because, you know, it was just being sort of, he just came out of hospital. So with this, with the heat in Cape Town, it was a heat wave, February, you know, everybody looking for him. There wasn't cell phones and all those kind of things those years. So you'll call Oma, you'll call Opa, which is my dad's parents, and they'll say, no word of him.
She wanted at least a photograph in the newspaper so that everybody would be aware that this person was missing and they were looking for him.
The Black River Parkway is next to the M5. The M5 is a highway, and then of course then you get the river. I was working for the city of Cape Town, and we were replacing street light poles on the M5. It was just after lunch. I took a walk to the river, and when I got to the edge of the river, I looked up and I looked down the river, and then all of a sudden something told me, look in front of you. And I just, you know, bent forward and, hey, how can this be? This is most a body that lies here. And I thought to myself, maybe it is one of that dolls that is dressed in the windows that come along with the river. But I stood there and I said to me, no man, this is a real body, yes. And I called one of my friends that worked with me that very same day, and he said to me, no, that it is a body, yes. The top of the body was covered with a canvas, and the bottom part was open, but he had a big green bronze between his legs here, so I don't know, so that the body must stay, you know, under the water, or it mustn't float.
Theo Hartnick telephoned the police. Divers were sent in and soon found the body.
When I lifted up the body, the canvas got loose, and I saw the arrow through the man's head.
After the body had been found, it was taken to the Salt River mortuary for a post-mortem to be held.
I happened to be on duty that week, which means that every morning the person on duty phones the mortuary to find out what kind of cases there were and to allocate to the different pathologists. And they told me that there was a body that they found in the Black River, wrapped in a canvas or something, and they think it is a Chinaman who belongs to the Chinese shark fin syndicate. So I was prepared that there was something extraordinary there, and I went in, got dressed, walked in, and here was the body of a male person. He looked as if he would have been in his middle age, but it was impossible to see any fine, definitive facial features. I've never seen anything like it, I knew that he would have been possibly missing for 3 days, but I couldn't believe it because his body was totally discolored, as if it was covered with an oily, brownish black substance. I took his right hand in my right hand, trying to pull him over to see if there were any weapons or knives at the back, and the skin of his complete hand came off in my hand, and it looked like a glove. So I just slipped the skin glove into my own hand, serendipitously, not knowing what the consequences would be, not realizing that it's not going to tear apart, but fitted perfectly. And as I looked at it, I realized that we can make perfect fingerprints from this.
The fingerprint expert managed to actually take his gloved hand and put it inside this outer skin, if I can put it that way. And then they managed to take fingerprints from the outer skin of the body. And these were then forwarded to Pretoria, where our criminal record centre was at that stage. It was actually, history was made. It was the first time it was done, that the outer skin was actually used to take fingerprints that ultimately led to the identification of the body.
45 minutes later, he was identified as Graham William Chatburn.
It was established that Mr. Chatburn, the deceased, had a criminal record. He had previously worked for the railways and had been convicted of theft.
The story was that he was in charge of a small sideways station and that he had a friend who made furniture from old railway sleepers, and that he had arranged for the sleepers to be offloaded at his little siding so that his friend could make the furniture. And of course, because he was found guilty of fraud or whatever, his fingerprints were taken. We performed the autopsy further, and of course the other thing was that there was an arrow of a crossbow going in on one side of the head and coming out the other side. Here we have the skull that belonged during life to Mr. Graham William Chatburn, who died as a result of this crossbow piercing and penetrating his skull. And I believe that whoever shot this into the head tried to remove this, and you can see that I cannot remove it even now. It is so firmly stuck. Have pulled this out completely, it would have exactly mimicked an entrance and an exit caused by a bullet. I believe that if you dug this body out of the river, everybody would have thought it was a through and through bullet wound, which would have made it virtually impossible to trace.
Our first port of call obviously was to go to Mrs. Chatburn and inform her that her husband had now been murdered. He wasn't a missing person anymore, he was now a homicide victim. She obviously became hysterical, she was crying a lot. The deceased parents, incidentally, were there at the time when we went to the home. And at that stage, there was nothing out of the ordinary to us. It appeared, that she was the typical grieving widow. She just received this horrific news her husband had been murdered.
We got home and I picked up the phone and I phoned Oma, and I recall her being extremely, not in shock, I can't even say in shock, but sort of, "Your father's dead," and she threw the phone down. I can't remember what at that moment went through my head, because I thought no. And then Marcel, my half-sister, phoned me. She said, "Jen, we just received the news that they did find his body." And she briefly explained. She didn't give a lot of info. She just said that they found him in a river and he's got an arrow through his head.
We never accept facts on face value. And we managed, while we're in the house, speaking to the family, asking a few questions, we established that the deceased, Graham Chatburn, was in the habit of sleeping only in his underpants. And the body that we'd found in the Black River, incidentally, was only dressed in his underpants. So this started us, thinking, where had this guy been murdered? And according to Louisa Chatburn's version, he'd gone off fully clothed. And the question now arose, why would somebody have stolen his clothing, but not his wristwatch and his wedding ring? Because when the body was found, he was still wearing his watch and his wedding ring. While we're at the house delivering the proverbial death message, we chatted to the family. We established that he was in the habit of sleeping in his underpants, and this made us suspicious.
When they found my dad, they found him with his watch and with the ring on his finger. I didn't really question it, because I thought it was an accident. So I never even thought of murder. When they said murdered, I thought, no, I'm sure it must have been an accident, because in my world, I was sort of protected against murder, and it just happened on TV, it happened in stories. It didn't happen in real life in my world.
We managed to have a discreet look around, and we examined the bed in the bedroom, and we found what we thought at that stage appeared to be a bit of blood on the bed, a small spot. Obviously, that was the days before DNA and things like that, but in our opinion, it appeared to be blood, and this also made us suspicious. In all cases like this, where one of the partners is murdered, you always have to look at the other half, unfortunately. And at that point in time, she definitely was a suspect as far as we're concerned. We hadn't ruled her out. We were only informed on the 24th of February that the crossbow had been found where it had been discarded on the outskirts of Kraaifontein at some sport fields. A gentleman had gone there with his son. They had a little BMX track there, and they incidentally found the crossbow where it had been thrown away in some bushes. This had been handed in at the police station, and an alert policeman at Goodwood had picked this up and called it in to us and said, look, for what it's worth, we've actually got a crossbow here that was handed in as found property. On the morning of the 24th of February, 1992, we'd been able to establish that a crossbow had been bought at a company called Pirate Guns in Brackenfell. And when we interviewed the actual salesman, he described the person who had bought the crossbow on the 24th of December, the previous year, day before Christmas. The description he gave of the person who actually purchased this crossbow fitted Louisa Chatburn. And at that stage, we had the proverbial smoking gun. We thought we had enough to go and arrest her.
Louisa was arrested at her home on the 24th of February 1992, just 8 days after the murder of her husband.
When we arrested her, she obviously denied everything. She, in fact, said we were making a big mistake, that she was definitely not involved in the murder of her husband.
I literally thought that somebody was just playing around with a crossbow, shot him by accident, and just wanted to run away, get away, hide. I just heard someone was arrested for his murder. So then I realized, okay, this must hit home now. It was a murder. There's somebody at that police station that they are investigating at that very moment, asking questions, and I still did not think it's her. Up to that point, not even once, because, you know, it's your partner, it's your wife, it's your lover, it's your friend. How can you do that? In my world, that did not exist at that time.
She was tearful. She obviously realized she was in big trouble, but she was adamant that she would definitely not be involved in her husband's murder. She remained steadfast. She denied everything.
I never, ever, ever suspected her. Never. I actually phoned her and I said to her, Louisa, I am so sorry about what happened.
She was detained overnight, and then the next morning we continued with the questioning. And later, during the course of that day, she admitted that she had lied to us. In fact, she gave us a version of what had happened. And her explanation at that point in time was that she'd woken up the morning, she'd found the deceased in the kitchen, and he had this crossbow in his hands and he was planning to commit suicide. And there was a struggle, and the crossbow went off accidentally and he shot himself in the head. And her version of events was that she'd panicked and decided that, in view of the fact that her previous husband had also died, that they might accuse her of murdering her husband, so she decided to get rid of the body.
I was at my uncle's house, at Uncle Noel's house, and the call came through, and it was Uncle Noel, and they said, we found the person. Yeah. They said it was her. It's shock. It was a shock. The last thing I expected. So, sorry, it was a shock. Last person I expected it would be. I couldn't even stand. I just went and I sat. I didn't feel my legs.
As more and more evidence came to light, the detectives began piecing together their case against Graham Chatburn's widow, Louisa.
We started delving into her history a little bit. And we established that her previous husband had committed suicide in 1989. They'd been living in the suburb of Vredenburg in Belleville at that stage. He was also a railway employee, he'd been a train driver. And we got hold of the actual case docket. We established that he'd allegedly shot himself with her revolver, which also seemed to us suspicious at the time. Although the matter had been finalized judicially, they had found that he had committed suicide, but it was just too coincidental for us. And on the spur of the moment, we actually drove up to this house in Vredenburg. And the first thing that struck us is that the color of the house. When the body had been found in the Black River, it had been partially wrapped up in an old railway tarpaulin. And on this tarpaulin, there was spots of paint. Somebody had obviously used this when they were painting as a drop sheet. And this color was like a dirty pink color. It matched the house in Vredenburg exactly. So that made us even more suspicious. The same color paint on the tarpaulin as the house that she'd previously lived in, it was definitely too coincidental, and this was another finger that started pointing at her.
Then Louisa changed her story again.
She then came with another version of events, and this related to conduct by the deceased. In brief, she alleged that the deceased had been sexually molesting her, making impossible sexual demands, and that came out. That there was now a further version. There were so many versions that have started to come to the fore now.
She said he abused her with vibrators and stuff like that, and I think when they actually went to the house quite a bit later, the vibrator was plugged in. If something hurts you that badly, I think you'll throw it away. You won't really keep on using it, and it was in the plug that she used her hairdryer. I'm sorry, I don't think that was really anything. It was just lies. It was all lies.
If you are egocentric, and you're almost arrogant in a way, and you might think that you're not going to get caught. I mean, surely she didn't commit the crime and then lied about everything and thinking that she was, going to be caught. So she kept on changing the version from when she was pushed into a corner and they were near the truth, she changed the story.
Okay. In any murder case, you look for a motive. And at that point in time, the motive in this case appeared to be for financial gain. When we arrested her, we found a file with, amongst others, insurance documents, policy documents in the boot of her car. And then it became apparent that the deceased's life was insured for 125,000 Rand, and she was the beneficiary. In 1992, that was a lot of money. It was rather a lot of money.
It came to light that Louisa had taken out an insurance policy on her husband's life. She was the sole beneficiary.
She actually went to a friend of mine who worked for somebody that sells insurance and policies and all of that. And Louisa was the woman who walked in there and said that I want life insurance and life cover on my husband. All my dad's policies and everything was already ready in a boot. So for me, that screams, money is the reason that I did this. I want something from this man's death, and I'll lie in order to try and get the money.
Louisa was arrested for the crime and then went out on bail. Now, during the time leading up to the court case, she was taking pictures and photo shoots and doing her hair, dressing to kill, if I may say that. It is unbelievable. It's egocentric, it's narcissistic, it's all those things, and yet again that emotional disconnection. no emotion, not thinking about the implication of her deeds, none of that. She just continued as if life couldn't be better.
In the run-up to the trial, it came to our attention that she had befriended an evangelist, a guy by the name of Gerard Erasmus. And there was a lot of speculation that they had known each other before the actual murder. And there was also a lot of speculation that this was maybe a love triangle and there was a third person involved. But we could never, our investigation never proved that she had known Erasmus before the murder.
Pastor Gerard Erasmus was Louisa's constant companion throughout the trial. His presence at her side raised questions.
We could also never obtain any evidence that he had in any way participated or contributed to the actual crime. And at the end of the day, she was charged alone.
My dad knew about an affair she was having, so he went to his sister with her. She was with them, and he basically said to Louisa, "Louisa, tell them about your affair." And then she laughed it off because they were always playful and giggly, and he wanted to tell them who it was, what that person did, that he knew about it, and she laughed it off and she said, "Oh, Graham, we basically sorted that out." So she just brushed him off and he kept quiet. He actually never ever then mentioned that again.
The trial started in the High Court in Cape Town in October of 1992. Louisa entered a plea of guilty. She handed up a written plea in which she indicated that she had been sexually abused by the deceased and had then decided to murder him. But her explanation was that this happened on the spur of the moment.
In her latest explanation of what happened, Louisa said she'd had enough of her husband's abuse. She said she loaded the crossbow she'd bought him for Christmas, went into their bedroom while he slept, and shot him.
There's no way she could load that crossbow. They also had her actually demonstrate, and she didn't know how to load the arrow.
There was a lot of speculation at that stage as that she might have had help with the murder because somebody had to load the crossbow for her.
The strength of a crossbow is measured in pounds. So the crossbow in mention was a 185-pound crossbow. It would be the same as you lifting a 185-pound weight off the floor. So a person of frail structure or slightly weaker person, I doubt very much if that person could load that crossbow on their own. Even an adult man will struggle to cock that crossbow.
What you have to do, it comes with a little foot stirrup in the front where the foot goes through to hold the crossbow so that it doesn't slip out of place. Both hands come on either side of the string. Now, I'm going to be trying to draw this. I could possibly cock it, but I could do damage to myself. A person weaker than myself is not going to be able to load this crossbow.
Louisa Chatburn was also given the opportunity to demonstrate how she had loaded the body into the car, and she couldn't. We got somebody, a policeman that was more or less the same height, same weight as the deceased, and she was unable to manhandle this body into the car. In fact, we got two policemen to try and do this, and they struggled. So the court, I think, correctly found at the end of the day that she could not have done this alone. She must have had some assistance from somebody else. The judge found Louisa guilty of murder, dolus directus, in other words, intentional murder. And he based the conviction on 8 factual findings that he made during the course of the trial. The first one was that it was a planned murder, and I think that was based on the fact that the crossbow had been purchased in December already, and she was waiting for an opportunity to use it. The second factual finding the judge made is that, as she alleged, this crossbow had never been bought as a Christmas present for her. She had bought this intentionally to use as the murder weapon.
I remember it as if it's yesterday, you know, all the presents under the tree. Marcel, my half-sister, was there. The kids were running around, you know, some of the cousins. And we always used to make quite a big thing of Christmas when I was growing up. So there was no crossbow under that tree, sorry. There was nothing there.
The court did not accept her version of events that she had been sexually molested by Graham Chatburn. In fact, the court rejected that. The court also found that she, or possibly somebody else that had helped her, had intentionally shot Graham Chatburn in the head on the morning of the 16th of February 1992. That she, and possibly somebody else who had helped her, had then loaded the body into the car and removed it from the house. She, or possibly somebody else who had assisted her, had then proverbially dumped the body in the Black River. Lastly, the court found, and this was based on medical evidence, that the deceased was still alive when he was thrown. He was seriously injured, but he was still alive when the body was thrown into the Black River.
Why was he so blown up and decomposed after 3 days in a so-called fresh river? Could there have been another explanation? Now, an arrow through the top of the head and brain would not necessarily be immediately fatal, because it doesn't go through life centers. It goes through the top. It could lead to hemorrhages later. And I've subsequently, recently started thinking, could he have decomposed and blown up because he was still breathing when he got into the water, and that some of the polluted water and organisms came into his lungs and that way spread through his body.
Louisa Chatburn was sentenced on the 25th of November 1992 to 25 years in prison.
Pastor Gerard Erasmus, who'd been so close to Louisa, died some years later. His role in Louisa's life and the murder case was never clear. Within the confines of prison, Louisa seemed to turn her life around. 6 years into her sentence, she received an award for being a model prisoner.
I'm overwhelmed. I didn't think, that they will choose me, but I'm glad, for them, seeing me as a role model for them. So it's a good feeling. If you're a role model for the people inside, they're looking up to you, they want to be like you, and it's like an upliftment for the people inside, because some of them, are coming not from good homes, and if you set an example for them, they want to be like that, and they're always telling me, you're so good, you're not swearing.
You have Louisa being imprisoned and being this model prisoner. She did all the courses, everything that was expected of her.
She was sort of the woman in prison that was that role model that you were looking for. They adored her. And there's a relationship, like a family relationship, that develops between the wardens and the prisoners, and the prisoners between one another. She was like a mother hen, a mother figure.
En soos wat Namondi vir my gesê het, Louisa, ek het vir jou gestem want jy's my rolmodel. Baie dankie Namondi. Baie dankie.
You'll never know if there was real remorse, but of the knowledge that we were able to gather and the things that we could see in the way she changed up stories and doing things, she has that ability to make you believe in her, to trust her, even if you look at Graham falling deeply in love with her, knowing about the affair but still continuing.
Jennifer Chatburn was never convinced that the full story of her father's killing had been revealed. Despite the fact that Louisa was behind bars, she was convinced other people had been involved. Beyond curious, she took up a university course in criminology.
I heard about the course, and I was a hairdresser at the time. I was practicing hairdressing as a trade, which I'm still doing today. It's a very creative side of me. But I always wanted to see, is there answers to, I couldn't understand the mentality of a criminal. And I thought maybe if I understand what goes on in the mind of a criminal, I'll feel better about what happened to us.
When I met Jennifer, she was the most determined person that I have met ever, and she was inspirational. She had a mission. She was there for a reason. She studied for a reason. She wanted answers, and she needed answers. And she was not going to stop without getting those answers.
The way it all happened, why, the whys is really driving you insane. The question marks. Eventually realized the books don't have the answers. The only person that will have that answer will be Louisa. She will have the answer, not the books.
We got in contact with a process called restorative justice, where, of course, the victim and the offender and the community has a chance to sit together around a table and face each other. So now you have a crime that's been committed, and you have someone that has been hurt. And they now get the opportunity to face that offender and ask the questions, all those unanswered things that they need answers to move on.
Will you be able to answer your victim truthfully because of what you heard now?
Pastor Jonathan Clayton started one of the first restorative justice programs in South African prisons.
You listen to the offender, you listen to the victims of crime or the victim's family, and you bring the parties together in a dialogue. And it is in that process where victims get more closure, or the families get more closure, because victims got many, many questions that they ask, and it was not answered during court hearings.
It was just myself and Uncle Noel that actually saw, the opportunity to talk to her and maybe get what we always wanted to know, which is the truth. Louisa, who helped you to kill Graham.
I was requested by the parole board to meet up with the Chatburns, because the Chatburns had a desire to meet with Louisa Chatburn.
It was such an emotional time. Jennifer was prepared to forgive Louisa.
I went with the idea, okay, what is it that I'm going to basically show Louisa when I see her the first time? Was it going to be an emotional person? Was it going to be a strong person? The session was around a table, and we were a little bit prepared. Jonathan said to us, they went to call her, are we ready?
While we sat there with Jenny and Noel in the room, you could sense how tense they were, how nervous they were. You could sense how they were looking at the door, waiting for their door to open.
I was staring at the doorknob, waiting for that doorknob to turn, and I knew that then she was going to walk through. And when she walked in, it felt like, oh my word, here is the woman who killed my father. And here she is, It's hard to see her, even after so many years. I wanted to show her I'm the strong one. I'm the survivor here, not the victim or the secondary victim. Whereas Noel was more honest with his feelings. He said to her, I want you to look at it, Louisa. I want you to look at it, Louisa. And she refused. And eventually he just slammed it in front of her and he said, look at it. She didn't want to look at what my dad's body looked like. That big black blubber of you can't even call it a human. She never ever wanted to look at it, whereas that is what she left behind for us to find, to identify, to basically, deal with.
During Graham and Louisa's marriage, her 2 young daughters from her first husband lived with them. They were asleep in their bedrooms on the night of the murder. There was speculation that the girls might have known more.
Jenny Chatburn was extremely outspoken about that, and no less well, that they made the assumption in her presence that they think it's one of her daughters who helped her.
She was protecting someone. She could not implicate this person. Almost in Jennifer's word, like a lioness would protect her cubs.
And that is where the session stopped, because then they had no further questions. They didn't want to engage with her anymore, because then they found that we can't move on because the truth is not on the table.
We went to the car with Jonathan and we were just so down, realizing that we went through all of this and we will never know the truth. And Jonathan sat with us and he took our hands, and I remember the 3 of us just sobbing, and he said, family Chatburn, he always used to refer to us as family Chatburn. He say, Louisa might get parole and she might walk out of this prison. He said, but today I want you to throw the prison keys away, because this is keeping you as a family in prison.
Louisa had one thing on her mind, and that was to get her date of release. And she was willing to do whatever it takes. She was willing to sit in the restorative justice process. She was willing to go through this.
I think the wardens wanted to get parole, have a new life. They felt she's paid for what she's done. They believed her stories. So I think she played the victim in prison as well, made people believe that she had good reason to do it. And I think that's why everybody's sympathy was with Louisa.
At her final parole board hearing that followed, Louisa's attitude visibly changed. She'd been given a parole date.
She actually got a date for her parole already. So we were there, but actually it was just a showcase. And that upset me, because the process is meant to support victims as well.
As soon as she got her date, she changed completely. And in Jennifer's words, almost to the old Louisa that they knew.
Yes, she's sitting in her parole board meeting, asking for them to give her parole, and here she lies. She said, no, they said, Louisa, who helped you to kill Graham and get the body away? She said, no, I did it alone. She actually said she did it alone. And I stopped them. I said, excuse me, they had the court document there, where it was proven, stated, that she did not do it alone. And I was sitting there thinking, how can you people sit here and think that she is actually rehabilitated? And she's not. She's sitting here lying to your faces. And she's actually considered to be ready for parole.
Louisa Chatburn was granted parole in 2004.
She might be free from jail, but I do not think that she is free from that emotional jail. She thought about herself as a very sexual being, and and she used that to manipulate people. She used that to manipulate men. And I think women who kill, I think that's a very powerful weapon they have.
The truth. If you tell the truth, reconciliation can take place. Restoration can take place. That's why we have the Truth and Reconciliation Forum. You can't have reconciliation.
Jenny Chatburn is extremely powerful when she comes into correctional facilities on our restorative justice process to come and share her personal ordeal in terms of the murder of her father. She comes with a photo of her father on the day of his wedding, and then after that she said, "This is my dad, and I'm going to show you what I got back after this murder." And then she puts on the screen a photo that is extremely challenging. We experience hardened criminals breaking down emotionally by looking at the contrast between the wedding photo and the photo of a victim that was murdered.
He has blessed me so much now with his story, and just your eyes. You have so much love in your eyes, and I want to thank you for loving your family so much for doing that. I stand in front of them, I look into killer's eyes, and I get the opportunity to see that the eyes that the victims don't get to see always, the secondary victims. I get to look into those eyes, and I hope that my story will make them realize how important the question mark is that they leave in people's life.
I did something terrible wrong, and there's so much that we can replace in life.
For me, it's like seeing Louisa tell me the truth. In a weird way, it's healing for me, because suddenly I stand in the gap of somebody else that's either been murdered, killed, a family, you know, and they look me in my eyes, and they're so honest when they speak to me at that moment. And that is what my goal is with this. And then I know that my promise to my dad, he's definitely not being done. Thank you so much.
Anybody else?
If somebody's been killed, they're gone forever. There's nothing that can bring them back. You can do anything. That person does not have a second chance. The family has to deal with that. They are victims for the rest of their lives. They've got to deal with that pain, that hurt, the anger, the emotions. Like I said, mine was a roller coaster ride. You know, it's so many years of different emotions and trying to cope with it in different ways. It's very weird for me to know that she could be so ruthless, and I have to deal with that aftermath every single year.